by getting some of our volunteer leadership to tell us a little bit about.
Back in 2006, and back then, Jack Hellman, who we all probably miss a whole lot, and his wife Liz, who's here somewhere, had me going back and forth between here and the Luna property, and from Oak Creek to the Luna property, 50, 100 times, I don't know. Not just me, there were so many people coming and going, and we looked for a path. We had Jack's blue flagging tape. He didn't like the FDA tape because it was plastic, so he had biodegradable tape, which, of course, every year we went back and we couldn't find where we were the year before. So eventually, Jeff McLemore gave us permission to start putting actual blue blazes, and we did that. And we got to the Luna property, and the Luna property was fenced, and there was an argument with South Florida Water Management and the ranch over the property lines, and it was in the courts. And that's really why we couldn't go through when we first moved the trail over to this side. But back then, the road was just a backcountry road with a few ranches, and it was a really pretty walk. Lots of birds, lots of things to see. And then they started putting in houses and a big sod farm, and they had big trucks traveling it, and it's really not much better than 98 anymore. So this is a wonderful thing to get this opened up. When I took over as section leader from Jack, when he and Liz decided to go travel the world, the first thing I wanted to do was make sure that it was doable. So I enlisted the help of Rich Quinn and his wife Barbara, who's here somewhere, and Paul Guion, another man we miss a lot. And we decided to hike the whole thing through. We started at the lock, camped at the lock that night, and Rich was injured, so Barbara brought him home. And Paul and I walked through the park, and we got to Starvation Slough the next day, and were met with Rich and Barbara with steaks and potatoes for lunch, which was wonderful. Wow. So the boys went home, and Barbara and I decided to hike the section from Starvation Slough to here, through the Luna property. We thought we were going to skirt around the riverside of the Luna property. They had dug a huge moat from the river all the way around. So in order to skirt it, you would actually have to swim the river. So we scaled the fences instead. And we decided that it could be done. Oh, okay. So we took my GPS map that I came back with and put it onto Google Earth and took all the squiggles and the circles and the try this and try that, and tried to make what looked like a reasonable straight line and proposed it to the FTA. And that kind of went back and forth with pros and cons, and yes you can and no you can't and maybe, and until Tom Clements, who was now section leader, decided he was done talking. So he just moved it. So here we are. And now we're opening up this last section. And I'm going to let Tom tell you about how we got from that point to here, with one exception. One person I need to thank is Audrey Minnis. I call Audrey the mayor of Oak Creek. Without her passion and all the work of everybody who has helped, this section might still be closed. But Audrey was not going to let it die. Okay, thank you, Audrey. Tom?
Sitting here looking at all these people, and I'm actually amazed because I didn't think we'd have more than 4 or 5 people show up today. So, and especially all you folks from south of us, that's really gratifying. You know, we talk about the people that started this, and certainly Jack and Liz and Laurie were the motivators behind this. But we started working this trail somewhat in earnest in 2015 at our November work hike. We did a little bit of surveying. We had some TAs from FTA come down and help us, and then with Audrey, they did some flagging and this sort of stuff along a potential route. And then in 2016, we really started working hard at our November work party. And we've continued through 2017 and then the first few months of this year. And it took a lot of people. We had at least 30 tropical trekkers and other FTA people that have worked on this trail in those 2 years. And I went down and the records that I have, I'm the volunteer hour coordinator for our chapter. So I did a little bit of research, and we have spent since 2015 467 hours of volunteer labor putting this section of trail in. That's 11.7 man weeks of work. And I don't know how many thousands of miles people drove to come out here and work on this. No, it's probably 20 or 30,000 miles. I don't have that kind of detail. But I want to recognize a few people that have been really instrumental in putting in this trail. In our chapter, we've had, like I say, 30-something people, but a few people have really put in a lot of time. Number one is Audrey. Audrey has put in many hours working out here. Every trail work that I scheduled to come out here, Audrey was here, except for when her daughter was getting married out in California. And I keep telling Audrey she shouldn't let her personal life interfere with trail work, but she doesn't listen to me. And then John McCardle. John is one of these guys that will come out at the drop of a hat, and John is an ace mower. And the only reason he hasn't worked more on this trail, he was out mowing other sections of our trail while we were working out here. And then we have Mike Gormley, who's a new member. He's going to be our trail master at Hickory Hammock. Has worked out here quite a bit. Rick Binder, Rich Quinn, Jim Coulard, all these people have really done yeoman's work in putting in this trail. Now this trail is replacing like 8 miles of road walk, but I did a Google Earth of a map of a line that I have, and it's like 10.25 miles from here to the Oak Creek campsite, and then from the campsite back to where the trail intersects Micco Bluff Road, it's about 11.25 miles. So those of you that are going to hike the whole thing, you got a long day ahead of you. I also want to thank the South Florida Water Management District. Without them, putting this trail in would be difficult, if not impossible. Especially Jeff McLemore's, who's the land steward for this area, has been instrumental in helping us put in this trail. Jeff has arranged to mow a certain portion of the trail up near Oak Creek, south of Oak Creek. And if he hadn't have done that, we'd still be working to try to open that section. So Jeff has been very helpful and a real friend of the Florida Trail Association. And also want to thank the landowners along the trail. You know, we have access routes across their property so that we can get into the trail, not just at the ends. And these folks, Monrad Chandler, Todd Clemens, have been really helpful and supportive of us coming across their property to get access to the trail so we can work on it. And I just want to thank them personally for the help that they've given us. And so with that, I'm done talking, and I think we ought to get hiking. So, Kelly, you have any more words?
We can't forget that. That's why we're here. Really quick before we head out, we just wanted to educate you guys a little bit about the section that you're about to hike as far as the ecosystems go. I know a lot of you guys drove really far to get here and maybe aren't as familiar with Central Florida hiking. So Mary Starzinski was nice enough to get volunteered to tell us a little bit about the different natural communities we'll be walking through and some awesome things that you can look out for on your hike.
Good morning. I did get volunteered. It wasn't too long ago, so I might have to cheat a little bit. As Kelly said, I'm Mary, and personally, I'd like to thank each and every one of you for all that you've done for the Florida Trail and the Tropical Trekkers, for all that trail work, for your leadership, your collaboration, and mostly for all that, for your devotion to the trail and all that it represents, encouraging healthy physical activity and personal growth in a natural setting. There's no better therapy. So thank you for your service. But I'm here today to talk a little bit about the habitats we'll be walking through on our hike today. We're going to start low and work our way up, which is, as you probably know, is about 6 inches in Florida, right? That makes it easier in some ways. Marshes are sweet and wet. Marshes are depressions or low. Am I talking too fast?
Nope.
No. Okay. Trying to move along here. Marshes are depressions or low spots in the landscape. They're wetlands dominated mostly by non-woody plants and shrubs. So wetlands are open, marshes are open and sunny as compared to swamps, which are shaded under trees. Marshes have standing water most or all of the year, and they tend to remain soggy during the dry season. Now we also have smaller depression marshes in the pine flatwoods. Okay, and those marshes can be seasonal, so we'll see them when we walk through the flatwoods as smaller ponds like alligator flag or hypericum, which are St. John's wort ponds. So, okay, so next habitat we're going to see is wet prairie. Wet prairie differs from a marsh by being just a little bit higher, and it doesn't have extended periods of standing water, but the soil always tends to be wet. Now, these are all wetland, herbaceous wetland communities, so they're herbaceous. And herbaceous plants are just grasses, grass-like plants like sedges and rushes, and broadleaf herbs that are called forbs, and that's the flowers and ferns, FFF. But you'll see these words, okay? Let's see, marshes, so a wet prairie tends to have water. This is good, a simple way to remember this. A wet prairie has water 6 or more months out of the year. A dry prairie tends to have water only for less than 6 months out of the year. Sorry, I didn't say this. And with marshes tend to have less than 50% trees. Swamps have more than 50% trees. So it's a really easy rules of thumb to help you remember this, okay? Now, dry prairies are natural grasslands, and a rare habitat in Florida. Dry prairies are also herbaceous grasslands, and so they have the same amount of grasses and herbaceous plants, but they are kind of dry pine flatwoods without the pines. Okay. The thing about dry prairies is that even though they have the same kind of vegetation, they have incredible diversity with 100 to 200 species of plant species in about an acre. Now, dry prairies are an endangered ecosystem in Florida. Okay, they're considered an endangered ecosystem, and they support some isolated bird species like the threatened non-migratory sandhill crane, the threatened burrowing owl, the endangered grasshopper sparrow, and the threatened Audubon's crested caracara. So it's a lot of habitat. Now, we used to have a huge amount of dry prairie in Florida, and it's considered an endangered ecosystem because 90% of the original 2.8 million acres has been converted to other uses. Now, the biggest areas of dry prairie were right here, north of Lake O and along the Kissimmee, and that's all trekker territory of all that you guys have worked so hard to help maintain. Now, we still have the largest block of dry prairie in Florida here, right in this area, and that's preserved as the Kissimmee Prairie State Park and the Kissimmee Prairie Sanctuary. Okay, just a little more, you doing okay? So we have marsh, go a little higher, wet prairie, a little higher, dry prairie, and now we're going to ranch lands. Okay, ranch lands are not native habitat. Ranch lands will often be interspersed with our hikes, especially around the prairie. Now, a ranch land is just a word used to describe generally very large to vast areas or privately owned grazing land. Now, ranch lands can be huge habitats, so they can encompass wet flatwoods, pinelands, cypress domes, all of that, okay? They usually incorporate lots of different habitats. So there's a strange terminology. Unimproved pasture refers to natural pastures, but the word improved pastures in rangelands refers to areas that have been completely cleared and replanted with bahia grass or non-native forages. Now, in that case, wildlife value is very, very low, but most ranches try to maintain a blend of non-native improved pasture, native pasture, forested areas, wetlands, and other natural habitats. And lastly, but not leastly, for many of us, our shaded hiking favorite, the hardwood hammock. Now, hardwood hammocks are just upland forested habitats, and in Florida, they're called hammocks. Now, they're just like any forest you've seen anywhere else, okay? And so in this area, especially where we are, we tend to have a temperate, broadleaf evergreen forest. But south, where many of us live, we also have a tropical rainforest mix. And hammocks are just isolated, well, not always isolated, upland areas, either along the coast or on our hike today on elevated inland areas. And this is where we see those huge, sprawling branches of the live oaks that support countless epiphytes like the resurrection fern and the, resurrection fern, and the hanging silver, Spanish moss. Provide nesting for mammals, cover for birds from the largest down to the smallest water. In addition, hundreds of species of insects, moths, and butterflies live and dine in those trees and trust those leaves to their young for food. Enjoy your hike.
Trail Program Director for the Florida Trail Association, but I used to be the version of Kelly Weiner, the regional rep in this area. So you have a lot of familiar faces. Are you guys familiar with that song by Bruce Springsteen called Glory Days? Glory days, look at the young man's black glory days. Anyways, when I first did this hike with the then program director, Eric Mason, we were like, well, let's go see for ourselves. I know volunteers have been out here. They've been, stomping around, looking at this, and basically the story that you heard Lori and Tom tell. And we were in just like bushwhacking, just overgrown, and it seemed like wild. And then there would be a blaze. And then we'd be like, wow, so Lori was here. And we kept on walking, like just pulling away like, David Livingston or something like that. And then there's another blaze. So I started singing Lori Blaze, like this was keeping us there. Lori's been here, Lori's been here. So but there's been a lot of people that worked on this, and it's not an easy undertaking. And so we really wanted to recognize them. But I have a question for you guys. If you read the e-blaze that we came out with for, I think, the fall, let me ask you, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. All right, so we've got at this point, before we open this, and we're about to do a ribbon cutting, but at this point we have about 276 miles of road walk on the Florida Trail. When we open this up, we'll have 268 miles of road walk. That's a pretty good bite. All right, we're really, really proud of that. Yeah, that's right. Go ahead, give it a round of applause. We're so excited about this. It's progress. And so last year we removed 14 miles of road walk. This year, along with this a reduction of road walk, we're slated to have 20 more miles of road walk reduced. And that's because of the dedication of volunteers. And these kind of road walks that are reduced, and these reroutes, really do come from the volunteers on the ground, because they notice when there's opportunities that may not be obvious on a map from a person that's not familiar with the area. So thank you for being involved. Thank you for knowing and being the on-the-ground eyes and ears. We really did want to recognize the folks that did this. So we made these patches for the folks that worked on this trail. We've got a list from Tom Clements of folks that really worked hard. We've got a couple of these for each of you. This little patch, it says Florida Trail. It has a nice live oak. It says Micco Bluff, established 2018. That's this year, right? Yeah, good. Okay, great. So we've got these for you guys. We're going to ask you to come up in a moment to take a picture. But for everybody else that's here, I don't want you to feel left out. We've got the same thing, but in sticker format. So everybody, we want you to go away with some stickers. Please find a staff member. We're going to have pockets full of these. And you're more than welcome to have one. If you really need to have a patch, if you absolutely need to have a patch, you can buy one. And you can support the work that we're doing here at the Florida Trail Association, and we'll sell you one of these for $3 today. Not a bad price, right? But unless you worked on this trail and dedicated all that time, you get these for free. So thank you so much. Let's give those volunteers a big round of applause. Hooray. Now we're going to stage a photo, a big ribbon cutting. I brought my giant gold-plated shears and some ribbon for the photo, but it would not be complete without the folks that worked on this reroute through the years. And so if you worked on this reroute, we want you to come on up. We're going to take that photo now. Is that okay?
I'm going to do a couple angles. I get cozy in the middle. There's a little bit of gas here.
Okay, so we want Lori and Tom on the scissors.
You're doing great, everyone. Okay.
A lot of cameras.
Right on. Okay. I don't know kind of countdown you want to do, Frank?
All right, 3, 2, 1.
Woo!